Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Let me welcome all of you to this ICS CAS conversation on PLA Navy's expansion in the Indian Ocean region, challenges and opportunities for India. As you know, this webinar is being co-hosted by the Institute of Chinese Studies and Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, or CAS. I acknowledge the presence with us of Mr. Peter Rimmele, the CAS resident representative in India, who is joining us from Germany this afternoon. We have ThePrint as a media partner. We are also live streaming this event on our YouTube channel. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, Admiral Sunil Lanba, Chairman, National Maritime Foundation and former Chief of Naval Staff of the Indian Navy and Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan, Director General, Center for Contemporary Chinese Studies of the Ministry of External Affairs and member of National Security Advisory Board, and Ms. Darshana Baruah, Visiting Fellow, Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Tokyo, and non-resident scholar, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for joining us. This is a really formidable panel we have this afternoon. We are indeed fortunate to have such a distinguished panel. The three panelists will explore China's rapidly expanding naval footprint in the Indian Ocean region, what it means for India and India's response. As you know, the expansion of the PLA Navy over the last 3 decades has been an unprecedented peacetime naval buildup of its kind. From modest-sized coastal brown water navy to the largest navy in the world, with deployments well beyond China's proximate waters. The political and strategic underpinnings of this expansion have been articulated very clearly by the Chinese leadership. At the 19th Party Congress in October 2017, President Xi Jinping had stated, "We'll make it our mission to see that by 2035, the modernization of our national defense and our forces is basically completed, and that by the mid-21st century, our people's armed forces have been fully transformed into world-class forces." Where does Navy fit into this world-class forces that Xi Jinping has been talking about? In fact, President Xi has very often spoken of building a strong Navy, a world-class Navy. China now considers emergence as a maritime power and protection of overseas interests as strategic priorities. In the Chinese White Paper on Military Strategy released in May 2015, there was a major change in the focus of the PLA Navy with addition of open sea protection to the existing role of offshore water defense. A number of things have happened. This doctrinal shift that I just mentioned, the rolling out of the Maritime Silk Road Initiative, speedy build-up of the PLA Navy and its assets, which is unprecedented in scope in peacetime among any navy of the world, major reforms and modernization of the Chinese military, which is underway currently, militarization of augmented features in South China Sea, near continuous naval presence and regular submarine deployments in the Indian Ocean, development of its first overseas facility and deployment of the PLA Marines at Djibouti, anti-piracy patrols and other actions taken by China are progressively resulting in a much bigger footprint of the Chinese PLA Navy in the Indian Ocean region beyond the Western Pacific. This is in consonance with China's stated policy of becoming a great maritime power. Indeed, Chinese naval analysts are talking of the imperative of moving from one ocean strategy to two ocean strategy, which incorporates the Indian Ocean as a normal theater for operations and combat reach of the PLA Navy in the future, apart from the Western Pacific. This afternoon, our panelists will discuss the Chinese Navy's rapidly expanding presence in the Indian Ocean and India's response thereto. Broad themes of discussion are current capabilities of the PLA Navy in the Indian Ocean region, likely PLA Navy force projection capabilities, postures and doctrines by 2035, and challenges and opportunities for India in response thereto. Before I invite our distinguished panelists to speak, let me welcome my good friend, Mr. Peter Rimmele, country representative for India of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, and invite him to make his opening remarks. Peter?
Thank you, Ambassador Kante. Its distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to welcome you to our Digina today, representing Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. Debating China and its rise and growing international ambition is a Herculean task that grows in importance with each passing day. I'm especially glad to talk about this topic with our esteemed partners at ICS and today's cast of guests who are all eminent experts in their own right. We have already successfully concluded a host of Diginas this year. Ambassador Kante mentioned them before, and I'm looking forward to extending this trend into the future. China's rise has been the dragon in the room. The term elephant is reserved for another country, as a looming reality for its more direct neighbors for the past decades, but their warnings went largely unheeded in the Western world. It was only in this and the past year when China's actions on the world stage became overtly aggressive that finally gave rise to the apprehension that it deserves in Europe and America. Falun Gong, Galwan, Hong Kong, Nepal, the South China Sea, Taiwan, Tibet, Xinjiang. It seems the People's Republic has managed to be the headline news in the past month almost as often as the various flamboyant remarks by the incumbent US president. Today, we're talking about China's footprint in the Indian Ocean and the wider Indo-Pacific, a topic that will very probably become the top news item of the near future. We have to look at China's great power ambitions. It was mentioned what kind of navy they would like to build up, and China's influence there has been accrued in the shadows, adhering with Deng Xiaoping's doctrine of silently rising in importance, but it cannot be denied anymore. Xi Jinping is no Deng Xiaoping. Under his leadership, China's global aspirations have been spelled out more clearly than ever before. This can be seen as a sign of newly confident China under a strong leader, but there is equally a strong possibility that China's more openly aggressive approach is a symptom of systemic policy failure of the Xi administration internally. China's perceived enemies have caught on to its behavior and its strategies are not willing to be bribed or threatened into submission anymore. Take India, for example. The Galwan Valley incident has clearly not turned out the way China had hoped it would. Indian resistance meant that the Red Dragon had to return to the negotiation table. But in the meanwhile, it already has sliced another piece of the salami of Indian territory, which India is trying to get back. The same is true for China's behavior in the Indian Ocean. The communist giant has bought itself commercial and military access, thereby its tried and tested stealthy strategy of ensnaring loans and securing kind of near-colonial port rights. The string of pearls strategy is ostensibly the seafaring answer to the new Silk Road. But some think it is also a string intended to trap India and inhibit its access to sea. Here too, China has overplayed its hand, encouraging resistance and forcing it into a mere aggressive stance. If not outright defeat, then at least policy failure. Let me give you some aspects of a German reaction. In the Western world, policy failure is also a description that might be applied to our dealings with China. Change through rapprochement had been an effective German foreign policy during the Cold War, and as we are a primarily trade-oriented nation, believing in transmitting our values through intercultural contact comes almost natural to us. When it comes to China, the past year has made it clear beyond any doubt that change through rapprochement did not work as intended. Chinese promises of opening up the restricted markets to German producers have always been only that, empty promises. Instead, trade with China has given the Chinese Communist Party access to German tech and research, either by willingly sharing or by outright industrial espionage. The Western idea that economy and politics are separate spheres does not work in China. Economic entanglement has not changed Chinese society, but it has given the regime economic leverage to threaten its Western partners in the political sphere. But again, I think China has overstretched. With its abysmal and divisive communication strategy during the corona crisis, it has squandered what little goodwill it was left with. On the back of a public backlash against Chinese foreign policy, the German government has redrafted its China policy and its outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Already in 2016, when Donald Trump became US president, Chancellor Angela Merkel remarked that Germany, and by extension Europe, would have to learn to rely on their own strength and pursue their own agenda. We believe that our vision for the Indo-Pacific is an inclusive one. Our new Indo-Pacific guidelines spell it out clearly, and you should see an image of them. They have just been released by our foreign ministry to ensure that the seas remain free and that every country has a chance at peace and prosperity. We are looking towards finding partners in the region to uphold a multilateral world order. We do not want a repeat of the Cold War, where countries had to pick sides. India and the Quad countries have started a process of regional, strategic, and economic integration that makes it clear that the partnership we are searching for and which we are offering can be found here. When it comes to our core beliefs and what we think the Indo-Pacific should look like, we are a natural fit with another. Let me conclude. I have used the term policy failure a few times now. When it comes to China, it is important to remember that even a highly efficient top-down organization can suffer from lapses of judgment. Just because authoritarian regimes keep their decision-making process opaque and like to portray the image of a strong and all-knowing leadership does not mean that we should buy into that phenomenon. To me, much of the recent developments concerning the communist behemoth say more about its mistake than its power. On the other side, we should not lean back and observe the mistakes being made by the dragon. The Indo-Pacific we are talking of today is only one sample, but we need to understand the underlying Chinese motivation for its behavior. And in the long run, this is to achieve a greater compatibility between the world order, and the world order is changing, and the Chinese one-party state, to have a bigger compatibility. That is the long-term goal. So we should not be just looking at the mistakes. We should rather have a deeper understanding of the logic, how China is behaving. Then we would also know what we could do about it. So in this sense, we have two instruments what are always used together. It is somewhere docking to something, DG. I think Ms. Kanta would have to correct my pronunciation. And it's the other one to have the power of argumentation, and this is Yunjin. So, ladies and gentlemen, as democracies, we do not have the luxury of portraying our failures as displays of power. Instead, the ability to make mistakes and debate them publicly is our power. As the German Indo-Pacific guidelines show, we're able to adapt to new situations. And right now, the stars have aligned, so to speak, with the Quad, or just the 2+2 talks. There is growing phalanx of regional powers committed to a multilateral world order and free trade that shares our values. With public opinion on China at a world low, now it's the time to rebuild a credible alternative to Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific. And so we could actively influence the shaping of a new rules-based world order based on the values we all believe in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for your frank, candid, and thoughtful remarks, highlighting certain concerns vis-a-vis China. Before I invite the panelists to make their opening statements, let me just explain the rest of the program of this afternoon. For the next 30 minutes or so, we will have opening remarks by our three panelists. After that, I'll have a short conversation with them. Thereafter, we'll have the Q&A session involving other participants. You may indicate your interest in asking questions to the panelists by using the raise hand option available at the bottom of the list of participants. Questions can also be sent to me through the chat option. Please do identify the panelist you are addressing your question to. Let me now turn to the panelists. Let me begin by inviting Darshana to make her opening statement. Darshana, as you know, is a young, talented, upcoming scholar who has made a mark as an expert on maritime security with a particular interest in the Indian Ocean region. Darshana, over to you. I'm requesting the three panelists to speak for about 10 minutes or so each so that we have enough time for Q&A session thereafter.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Kantha, for that really kind introduction. Thank you, ICS and CAS, for this opportunity to speak at this webinar. And it is a real privilege to be speaking alongside Admiral Lamba and General Narasimhan. I've been asked to talk about China's expansion in the Indian Ocean region with a focus on developments, particularly that concern India the most. I'll just briefly touch on a few themes so that we can have more of a, following the two other panelists' remarks, we can have a conversation or dialogue on that. The Indian Ocean has been a fairly different story than the Pacific. Even when the Chinese activities in the South China Sea began to worry governments across the region, especially from 2012 with the Scarborough Shoal incident, there was very little concern regarding China in the Indian Ocean. It was assumed that China is far from being in the region, and more importantly, far from being able to sustain itself and sustain a presence in the region. While that still stands true, the China narrative has clearly changed significantly, and the effects of India's recent border contentions with Beijing is now expanding to the maritime domain. From Chinese point of view, however, China has been pretty consistent with its engagement and presence in the Indian Ocean region. Its longest continuous presence has been in the form of its counter-piracy deployments beginning in 2008, and its capabilities and sometimes its assets deployed for the mission actually outmatch the threat and the security environment at hand. Prior to that, China's capabilities with regard to the Indian Ocean was fairly limited. In its 2010 defense white paper, China indicates its interest or the need to have logistic support for out-of-area activities, meaning beyond the Western Pacific. That thought translated into outlining the need for a blue water navy in 2013 white paper, which also coincides with an increase in its assertive actions in the South China Sea. The 2015 white paper strengthened that argument, as Ambassador Kantha mentioned in his introductory remarks, and it has since been consistent in the form of China's need to be able to protect its interest, business, and citizens overseas, which is much like other navies around the world. In terms of concerns, 2014 was probably one of the first red flags when a Chinese submarine docked in the Colombo port. Unfortunately, from a political point of view, at that point, India emphasized more on Sri Lanka's right to be able to do that rather than assessing China's Indian Ocean interest. The 2016 Maldives water crisis would be another event to showcase Chinese abilities in the Indian Ocean region. While India was the first nation to reach Malé to support its maritime neighbor, China was the quick second. The distance China had to cover was significantly more than India's, reflecting Beijing's interest and political commitment in establishing itself in the Indian Ocean region. The Belt and Road Initiative has been an umbrella project that anchors China's interest and presence in the region. With global ambitions, as Ambassador Kanta mentioned, there is no doubt that Beijing will have to sustain a presence in the Indian Ocean region and protect its sea lines of communications, its energy links with the Middle East, its trade in the Indian Ocean. In peacetime, it's harder for China to send its military blazing into the Indian Ocean. So much like we have seen through history, China as a nation with great power ambitions too has utilized commercial activities to secure its maritime interest. Flag follows trade. If China has considerable investments, citizens, and commerce in the region, which it now does, it has the justification and reason to begin strengthening its foothold. To that end, we have seen China set up its logistic military facility in Djibouti in 2017, even though they had a policy of no overseas bases or military facilities. In terms of defense agreements or military sales with countries in the Indian Ocean region, China's strongest partners are Pakistan and Bangladesh, followed by Sri Lanka and Myanmar. However, its commercial and political engagements span across the Indian Ocean region, and to a great deal, it has continued to engage with these countries simultaneously. In terms of a traditional security presence, China's military presence has been fairly limited. Its biggest challenge has been geography, which is India's strength as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned. Although China has stepped up its diplomatic, political, and strategic collaborations with the littorals and islands in the Indian Ocean region, geography is still a major constraint, and geography will play a key role in deciding the Sino-Indian competition in the maritime domain. For example, if we take the current scenario, the pandemic, COVID-19, the fact is China cannot reach any of its partners in the Indian Ocean region as quickly as India can, unless they have a sustained presence somewhere in the region, which would require a series of military facilities, bases, amongst other assets. Even in terms of evacuation of its citizens, we saw Beijing evacuating its stranded tourists from island nations across the Indian Ocean, such as Maldives, but they did not offer to use the same aircrafts in extending that assistance to stranded Maldivian citizens in Wuhan, China. We saw India undertake that operation, including students from Bangladesh and other countries. It is something that has played an factor in China's relationship. It is something that goes to speak about ties as far as the region is concerned. Similarly, we've seen India undertake a massive mission in delivering essential food, medical supplies, even medical training units across the Indian Ocean, and India's assistance and outreach to the Indian Ocean islands and the Indian Ocean region outmatched China in its reach and presence as far as this pandemic is concerned. And it is of no surprise, because to a great deal geography. There is no ignoring the strength of geography, and that will play a crucial role in deciding Chinese strengths in the Indian Ocean region. However, China's approach is not purely military, and India's approach too would have to be a combination of non-traditional security issues and traditional security issues. For instance, China has managed to deepen its relationship with its subregions of the Indian Ocean region simultaneously, whether it's the Middle East, the eastern coast of Africa, or the Bay of Bengal. Most countries look at the Indian Ocean region in silos, and India has done the same traditionally. Most of India's Indian Ocean operations tend to stop with Seychelles, although that is changing and changing quickly. When the Ministry of External Affairs set up the Indian Ocean region division in 2016, it included Sri Lanka, Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles, but it excluded Madagascar and Comoros from the division, the only two other islands in the Indian Ocean region. That changed in 2019 when it finally included the two regions to kind of offer a holistic view or kind of a whole of region approach to the Indian Ocean region. China, in the meantime, has consistently reached out to African islands and Western Indian Ocean littorals, where India hasn't been that strong in terms of training, whether it's police or law enforcement or Coast Guard, as well as political visits. Prior to 2015, when Indian Prime Minister made historic stops at the island territories, there was a gap of almost 2 decades where India, there was no high-level visit from India in the Indian Ocean region. As far as the eastern coast of Africa is concerned, or the Western Indian Ocean is concerned, there's also a gap in training of officers from the region, whereas in the sense that India hasn't been able to attract that many officers into its defense academies, and most of them are now actually going to China for their officer training, which creates difference because as when I traveled through it, there was a difference in how they interpreted UNCLOS and how perhaps we saw it, because their training was from a particular country. While it is important to trace China's movements in the Indian Ocean region, I believe it is also important to assess why the Indian Ocean region is welcoming China the way it has been doing so. Beijing has not gone around and imposed its initiatives and projects on the islands or the littorals. They have been welcomed. They have been able to do that because they have been welcomed, and they've been sought by these countries as an alternative power, as other security partner in the Indian Ocean region. Politically, India's approach toward the Indian Ocean region has been slightly relaxed due to the lack of a competition, especially prior to 2014 and 15. But that also created scope for misunderstanding and political mistrust amongst the island nations, which is something that India has to deal with now. China will continue to offer this assistance and increase its relationship and play into the dynamics in the Indian Ocean region, where the island nations are looking to seek or are seeking alternate security partners, or at least expand their partnerships. Going back to geography, which is also sort of my concluding point, China's operational experience in the Indian Ocean region has been fairly limited. In order to be able to establish a substantial presence in the region, it would need operational strengths that it will look to gain through exercises, trainings, and port calls. One of China's challenges in the Indian Ocean is maritime domain awareness in the Indian Ocean region. As it is for most nations, given the vast scope of MDA or maritime domain awareness missions. However, Beijing's approach has not necessarily been entirely military in nature. China has increased its surveillance and mapping exercises in the region, which is a concern to India. And these exercises do not come in the form of only military vessels, but more through scientific and fishing vessels, as well as hydrography missions. Given the dual nature of such exercises, it's hard to determine what exactly Beijing is doing in the region, but it is safe to assume that China is building on its underwater data and oceanographic mapping of the Indian Ocean region, critical for its submarine deployments along with other missions. As far as dual-purpose ports are concerned, which fall under the Belt and Road Initiative and which has been a point of concern for many, I believe it will be harder for China to just turn one of its commercial ports outright into a military outpost. It does have strategic significance, though. China can definitely use these ports for non-traditional security issues, for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, for scientific surveys, which carry strategic and military implications. Even fishing rights, something that China acquires widely in the region, especially in Southwest Indian Ocean, will carry more implications than a road or a bridge in one of the islands or littorals in the Indian Ocean region. In the immediate future, China's ability to gather information and increase its maritime domain awareness will decide what role it plays in the region and which ports can sustain such measures. MDA will be critical in China's Indian Ocean ambitions, and it's important to remember that creating MDA and gathering information does not necessarily have to be through direct military means. I'll stop here, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Darshana, for so cogently bringing out the evolution of Chinese Navy's presence in the Indian Ocean region, and also highlighting certain salient aspects of China's growing footprint in the region. I'll now move to General S.L. Narasimhan, who is one of our most respected China scholars. General Narasimhan will speak for about 10-12 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just sharing this presentation so that I can share a few thoughts. At the outset, I would like to thank Ambassador Kant and ICS for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts with my dear friend Admiral Lamba and Darshana. I'm also a little nervous speaking to so many of the admirals of the Navy about the Navy of PLA. But then I also take heart from the fact that Admiral Liu Huaching was an army man who laid the roadmap for the PLA Navy. So to some extent, I think I can speak about a few issues related to the PLA Navy. I want to first get the numbers out. Basically, what happens whenever these force levels are matched, first thing people look at is numbers. And I for one never believed in numbers, basically because numbers are only one factor of any kind of combat power. So I'll just put this thing out at the first slide, and thereafter I'll speak about the strategy and other issues. Just give me a second. I think it just got some time to. Anyway, I'll start speaking, and I think the slide will come up on its own. Let me start speaking yeah, it has come up. Firstly, the aircraft carriers is the major thing that a lot of people talk about these days. At the moment, they've got two. One was a refurbished carrier, and the other one they built indigenously. And by 2035, they're expected to have either 4 or 5. As far as the destroyers are concerned, you can see the numbers, 55, frigates, 60, and the numbers are already listed there. I'm not going to read it out. But in addition to that, for territorial kind of defense, they do have this Type 22, that is the Hubei class SWAT, that is a twin hull catamaran kind of a craft, which is about 80, and they have completed the construction of this series. Type 56 is the Chiangkau class frigates, corvettes. 55 to 70 are being planned. Almost they are in the middle of this number at this point in time. I'm sure they'll be able to complete it in good time as far as 2035 is concerned. These are the numbers. I just wanted to put it out. One of the reasons why the PLA Navy didn't actually venture out much into the Indian Ocean region in the earlier times is the lack of replenishment ships that they had. They had just about 5, about 10 to 12 years ago. They have made it to 15 now, and they're likely to go up to 20. This gives them the capability of the long legs, and also the anti-piracy task force task that they took up from 2008 onwards have given them this long legs capability over a period of time. As far as the strategy is concerned, active defense is a thing that was practiced from Mao Zedong's time. But active defense does not only mean for land-oriented strategy. It can also work out in the field of Navy. And it simply means that I don't have to wait for the opponent to launch the offensive or take the initiative. I can grab that initiative if I can. And that means that the first strike will maybe from my side. So this is simply put what active defense is there. So this is a strategy that can be used in the sea also. And this is one of the things I wanted to flag. Two ocean strategy Ambassador Khan talked about. Basically, that involves the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And for their far seas operations, first the South China Sea, then the West Pacific, and thereafter the Indian Ocean is what they are looking at. That is typically known as the two ocean strategy of the Chinese. Ambassador Kant also talked about the defense white paper, which talked about the offshore waters defense to open seas protection. That itself gave an indication that the PLA Navy will be moving out of the territorial waters and to seek a bit of a global role slowly and steadily. And that has brought them to the aspect of taking active part in the establishment and protection of international and regional maritime order. When I say this, somebody spoke about the UNCLOS again earlier. Darshana, I think, spoke about the UNCLOS. But the issue that comes up is UNCLOS, though China is a party to it, but they then adhere to that selectively. But they are all in all the areas where the procedures and rules have to be established, they are taking part in those. So this is something that will come up and play out by 2035 in a big manner. construction of the strategic maritime hubs along the 21st century maritime Silk Road. This I'll talk about it a little later. I'll show where the concentration is, and I'll also show how Chinese are actually progressing on this. The last point on this, which I wanted to highlight, is the control of oceans. The control of oceans is also, I will show you sometime later, as to how they are actually trying to cover the entry and exit points of the oceans. And that is a theory which Sir Julian Corbett had mentioned in his paper. And that seems to have actually caught the eye of the PLA Navy and the Chinese. So therefore, one theory was Mahan. The other theory I think they are looking at is Sir Julian Corbett's theory. And that typically talks about control of oceans. So what does it indicate to us in terms of 2035? In terms of 2035, it says that the assessment could be that the beginnings of a global maritime power, that is China, can be visible by that time period. We all have talked about the first and second island chains. We all know that the first and second island chain has been discussed. Chinese have been quiet about the second island chain for the last about 8 to 10 years. I would say a little more, about 12 to 13 years. But the first island chain is constantly under mention. And even if anything that happens, they talk about the weaponry that they develop. Like, for example, the Tungfeng 26 missile that they develop is all targeting the second island chain. So this is something first and second island chains have been talked about. And my understanding is that once the first island chain gets fully under their control, they will start wielding the influence toward the second island chain. But interestingly, Andrew Latham speaks about third, fourth, and fifth island chains. Please have a look at this. Third island chain is encompassing Alaska, Hawaii, and New Zealand. Fourth island chain linking Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Diego Garcia. And the fifth chain extending from Djibouti on the Horn of Africa, past Madagascar to South Africa, and encompassing the Persian Gulf region. So slowly and steadily, what it tells us is that as the comprehensive national power and the power of the PLA Navy keeps increasing, the power is expected to extend its influence in various spheres. And from first to second to third to fourth, fifth chain, this is something that we may witness, but not by 2035, but maybe by about 2050 and beyond. So this is something that we can keep in mind. As far as the PLA Navy in the Indian Ocean region is concerned, Indian Ocean region so far has remained a strategic vulnerability for the PLA. I don't know how much of this Admiral Lamba will agree with me, but one of the reasons why China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, and Kra Canal are being talked about. CPEC and CMEC are in the works. Kra is, of course, some time away. But the issue that comes up is two things. One, on the eastern and the western side of India, you get two corridors coming into, one to Bay of Bengal and the other one to the Arabian Sea. And in addition, if Kra Canal comes up, then that Malacca dilemma, which Hu Jintao spoke about in 2004, will probably get overcome in some form or the other. So this is something that we can keep in mind. As far as the priority is concerned, priority for operations for PLA Navy at the moment until about 2035 is concerned, it is the South China Sea, then it will go towards Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. There can be questions on whether it will come to Indian Ocean region first or go to Western Pacific first. That is debatable. But these are the places where the PLA Navy is expected to exert its influence. The increase in the PLA Navy activities in Indian Ocean region will be clearly visible. The Anti-Piracy Task Force, as I mentioned earlier, has given it the opportunity to reach the Indian Ocean region approximately 7 years ahead of time. They were planning sometime around 2015 to enter the Indian Ocean region, but this Anti-Piracy Task Force, which got established in 2008, gave them that leverage of coming into the Indian Ocean region approximately 7 years earlier. So number of exercises you can see could happen with Pakistan, with Iran and Russia. We saw the China, Russia, Iran exercise happening already. It could extend to other countries. Research vessels Darshana spoke about that are already being visible in the Indian Ocean region, and deep sea fishing is another one that we can see. So in all these activities, you will find the PLA Navy's role in it. As far as IOR is concerned, I personally feel it will continue to be important basically because lot of trade of China flows through Indian Ocean region, which is going to be extremely important for it. Other factors for operations in Indian Ocean region could be the situation that's obtaining in South China Sea and the West Pacific, operations like anti-piracy, HADR, which Darshana mentioned again, and also the maritime infrastructure that PLA Navy is planning to create over a period of time. So in the next 2-3 slides, I'm going to mention how is this maritime infrastructure going to come up. As far as the other activities of the PLA Navy is concerned, I have listed them out. Basically, access arrangements, shore-based maritime reconnaissance, naval exercises, sale of naval platforms, thereby creating a dependency, and expansion of ISR facilities for supporting planned operations is something you can see. As far as the port acquisitions are concerned, I have put a map here, and the dots will tell you exactly as to where the China is concentrating on this. If you look at the concentration, you will find it happening in the Mediterranean and the European and Western Europe mainly. And in the recent past, you can see these are the kind of acquisitions that have taken place. And if you plot them on the map, you find the entry and exit points of Mediterranean are easily covered. And in addition to that, if you take on the other side, the Panama Canal is also owned by Li Ka-shing, who is a tycoon in Hong Kong, and Nicaragua Canal is also being worked on by the Chinese. So you find in all these places, you find a Chinese influence increasing. So far, Djibouti is the only place where they have said that it will be a logistics base for the Navy, but there are many other port acquisitions that are taking place, which at any point in time in future could be converted to a base to support operations. At the moment, they are all basically commercial, and at the moment, they are also giving preference to the Chinese commerce that is flowing through these ports and the berths that they have acquired. I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I'll take it in the question answer session. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, General Narasimhan, for that very thoughtful presentation, for bringing out how PLA Navy is developing towards 2035 in terms of strength, in terms of its maritime strategy and maritime infrastructure. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions during the Q&A session. Now it gives me great pleasure to invite Admiral Sunil Lanba, one of the most respected naval officers and thinkers in the country. Admiral Lamba.
Thank you, Ambassador Kanta. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to speak to all of you. I've been asked to speak on our response to PLA Navy's growing presence in the IOR, and including our role as the provider of security or the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. General Narasimhan has already covered you with the data sets of what is the number of PLA Navy ships. The PLA Navy was born in 1949, and the first overseas visit of the PLA Navy took place in 1986. 2 ships visited the port of Karachi. That was the first time that they left their coastal areas and came across. There has been a near permanent deployment since December of 2008 in the form of the Anti-Piracy Escort Force, and at the moment the 35th Anti-Piracy Escort Force is operating in the Gulf of Aden. At any given time, there are 6 to 8 PLA Navy ships, 3 of the Anti-Piracy Escort Force, and the balance 3 or 4 intelligence, hydrographic, survey ships. They are generally in the southern part of the Indian Ocean, and sometimes in the international waters in the Andaman Sea, generally carrying out, as Darshana had said, survey, bottom mapping, getting data on hydrography. So this is a general pattern of the deployment. The largest numbers in the Indian Ocean was in July, August of 2017. I think that was more of a coincidence where you had one escort anti-piracy escort force, another one coming to relieve them, and a force of 3 ships going all the way to the Baltic Sea to excise with the Russian Navy. So at that particular point of time, for almost say about 40 days, there were 14 to 16 ships. The submarine deployment started off in 2013, and they generally deployed 2 submarines in a year for a period of about 3 months. And they continued that till the beginning of 2018. And after that, there is no known deployment of the Chinese Navy submarine post that. And between 2015 and say end of 17, the PLA Navy was all over the world. The anti-piracy at cost force, after finishing out the tenure in the Gulf of Aden, would generally make a trip to Europe. One group went all the way around Africa. One group went to Europe and then went across to the United States. But post 2017, all this has stopped, and the escort force finishes the tenure and generally heads back home. So their deployment across the world has come down post 2017. What have we been doing about it? One is whenever, since 2007, the Indian Navy has been mission deployed. We have a ship permanently deployed in the mouth of the Malacca Straits in the in the Andaman Sea. There is a ship on permanent deployment in the Gulf of Aden. And periodically, there are ships deployed in the Northern Arabian Sea going into the Persian Gulf, Bay of Bengal, and the Southern Oceans. So there is near permanent presence in the 2 main ingress and egress routes of the Indian Ocean, along with the long-range maritime patrol aircrafts, which fly on a daily basis to generate a maritime domain awareness. So there is ample opportunity and inputs whenever there is a deployment of Chinese Navy ships into the Indian Ocean region, whether they are coming through the Malacca Straits or the straits in the Indonesian archipelago. And the PLA Navy ships have always been greeted by a naval ship or the Boeing aircraft and say, hello, welcome to the Indian Ocean. And an eye is kept on them and they're monitored, say like whenever a ship is deployed at least once in 48 hours, a P-8 Boeing goes and updates the position. So they are tracked and an eye kept on them. So we know what is going on, where they are deployed. Okay. The other is General Narasimhan made a whole mention of the investments in ports. Ports don't make bases. Ports is a facility which you can use to carry out, say, operational turnaround. But as push comes to shove, you need to have facilities in this port to support ships. So at the moment, the only facility they have overseas is in Djibouti, and they have gone and made a jetty of almost 335 meters, which can also dock their future aircraft carrier if and when they deployed to the Indian Ocean. If and ever their intelligence or a hydrographic ship has entered a EEZ, those ships have been formatted upon by naval ships and been escorted out of our waters. This has happened twice in the last couple of years. So this is what has been our response. We know what they are up to, what their deployments are, including when the submarines were deployed. They were on a couple of occasions, they were detected and tracked by both the aircrafts and the ships. Now coming on to our role as a provider of security or net security provider. There are a number of points where we are providing security. I think the most basic of them is training. This has been an ongoing issue which has been going on for decades. And at any given time, you almost have 1,000 personnel, both officers and sailors, from over 30 odd countries training with us, the largest numbers being from Sri Lanka. There are some African nations also from the East Coast, Kenya, Tanzania, who also come and train with us. But I agree with Darshana, there is a capacity constraint of how many overseas trainees we can get. One is the physical infrastructure and the other is the support under the ITAC program from the MEA. Other is building capability and capacity of maritime forces in the Indian IOR. This has been in the form of gifting of ships, which has been done to Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, including Sri Lanka, and opening lines of credits to different countries like Vietnam, and they have ordered a whole lot of fast patrol crafts which are being built in India. The latest being the lease of a submarine to Myanmar. So this is not only capacity, but most important is capability of operating those platforms. That is in the form of training. We also send mobile training teams to countries like in a big way to Myanmar, to Kenya, including Oman. So that is on the training capability and capacity. We also provided maritime patrol aircrafts, and there is a permanent deployment of a Donia aircraft with crew in Seychelles. We have looked at increasing our sustenance capability in the form of bases. There is an ongoing project going on in Mauritius. There is a dialogue which has been going on with Seychelles. They are also in talks with the Oman, and the signing of these logistic support agreements with a number of countries, the most famous and talked about being Lamba with the United States, increase our sustenance or deployability of our forces. The other is a very important point is maritime domain awareness. In December 2018, we set up the International Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region at Gurugram, with over 20 nations for exchange of white shipping data. The IMAC, ICIOR publishes a monthly update, which is now available on their website, freely downloadable by anybody. And a classified version is given to a whole lot of agencies in New Delhi. So, and we have helped set up coastal radar chains with a number of island nations like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, and we are in dialogue also with other countries to set up coastal radar chains which can feed into generating a comprehensive maritime domain awareness. And I think the most important is our engagement with maritime forces in the form of exercises. I think one of the important ones was Milan, which started in 1996 in Port Blair. Initially, it was 6. It is now grown, and unfortunately, in 2020, we had planned as a multilateral exercise. Over 42 navies had been invited, and 30 had accepted. But unfortunately, that had to be cancelled because of COVID. It was to take place in April at Vizag. I'm given to understand it is now being planned in 2022. Other exercises, we do a whole lot of exercises. We do coordinated patrols with our eastern neighbors, with Bangladesh, Thailand, Indonesia, Myanmar. Also, we go and patrol the EEZ of island nations in the form of Maldives, Seychelles, and Mauritius. Once in 6 months, the ship goes and spends about a month in their waters, embark their crew, and I think I've taken my 10 minutes. I think I'll stop here. So basically, we have got a comprehensive engagement policy. And in 2015, the Indian Navy and the MEA finally came out with a defense diplomacy document, got both MEA first and then MOD on board, where he identified priority areas. Priority areas was the Indian Ocean region. Priority 2 areas was the extended this thing. I won't talk about Quad and Malabar and all that is beyond the Indian Ocean region. If there are any in the Q&A, I'm more than willing to take that. I'll stop here, Ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Admiral Lamba, for those very insightful remarks on India's response to China's growing presence in the Indian Ocean region, and also bringing out India's role as net security provider in the region. Now, I will use my prerogative as the chair to pose some questions to three panelists. Since the time left is rather short, I can ask only 3-4 questions. Let me begin with Admiral Sunil Lanba, then I'll turn to General Narasimhan, and then finally to Darshana. Admiral Lamba, General Narasimhan in his remarks talked about some of the drivers of or motivators behind China's naval expansion in the Indian Ocean region. One can argue that China's expanding footprint in the IOR is linked to its vulnerabilities in terms of its economic interest as the largest trading nation and the need to secure sea lanes of communications in the context of well-known choke points in the Indian Ocean. Alternatively, one can suggest that China's presence derives from its great power ambitions, which cannot be achieved without being a great maritime power as well. Or it could be a combination of two. How do you read China's motivations when it's expanding its presence in the Indian Ocean region? And what is India's assessment in this regard?
See, if we go back in history, no country has become a great power without being a maritime power. You can take Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, and United States. So the Middle Kingdom has decided that it is going to be a global power, and to be a global power with building influence, it has to be on the back of maritime power. The same case is with us. If we aspire to be a regional power or a global power, we have to focus on maritime power. Without that, it is all talk and bluster. So one of the main motivations of their developing their navy and all is to be a global power, which on the back of maritime power. The vulnerabilities in the Indian Ocean region of China is not going to go away. Whether you have CPEC linking Xinjiang with Gwadar, or you have the linking in Myanmar, you build the Kra Canal, they're dependent, being a net security importer, almost 65-70% of their oil is going to go through the Indian Ocean region. And whatever oil pipelines you may build, like even the one in Myanmar to Kunming, you cannot, at best, it has a capacity of some 300 million barrels. It only replaces some 24 or 30 tankers that's going through the Malacca Strait. So this vulnerability in the Indian Ocean region is going to be there for them throughout. And their aspirations to be global power is going to be based on development of maritime power, and you can see the way the investment they have been making in the Navy. No Navy has grown at this pace in the last, post the Second World War. They are commissioning between 12 to 18 ships in a year. And out of that, there are 4 or 5 frigates and destroyers being commissioned every single year. This is unmatched anywhere in the world. The number of ships they have commissioned in the last 7-8 years is more than the combined strength of the Indian Navy, French, Spanish, German Navy put together. That is the kind of build-up which is taking place, and it is here to stay. General Narasimhan has projected their build-up, which is going to go to 2035. But the mute point is, how many assets can they deploy to the Indian Ocean? Our analysis, which we carried out a couple of years back, at best you can have about 70% availability of ships. Others will be in refit, undergoing workup training. And when you're looking at frigates and destroyers, at best in 3035, when they have almost a close to 100 frigates and destroyers, they will not be able to deploy more than 20 ships of this category into the Indian Ocean along with logistic support. And it's a very long logistic chain. And I think the Indian Navy is more than capable of taking them on if push comes to shove. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you. I have one more question for you, Admiral Lamba. As the PLA Navy expands its presence in the Indian Ocean region, what are the potential areas of conflict between PLA Navy and Indian Navy? Do you anticipate standoff situations between the two navies in the Indian Ocean region?
Standoffs generally don't take place at sea. Okay, standoffs is more of an issue on the land border, on the LOC or the LAC. Okay. At sea, very rarely is there a standoff between two navies. It doesn't happen. So what may happen in the ocean is what is happening on a land border and what decision the government of India takes. In my opinion, it is to our advantage to expand their theater of operation into the maritime domain, because in the Indian Ocean region, the advantage rests with us. So it should be in our interest that we expand the theater of operation from the land into the maritime domain where we are at an advantage, and it will pay dividends where you will get new pressures to bear on China. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now turn to General Narasimhan. General Narasimhan, you brought out how the strength of PLA Navy will increase moving towards 2035. Clearly, there'll be a big gap between strength of Indian Navy and PLA Navy at that time. Admiral Lamba pointed out that only part of that inventory can be deployed in Indian Ocean region. Yet, we'll have a capability gap vis-a-vis PLA Navy. What kind of role do you think our partnership with other like-minded countries will play in dealing with concerns we have vis-a-vis China's naval expansion in the Indian Ocean region? Whether it's countries of Quad or beyond, what kind of partnership and cooperation do you anticipate?
I'll try and pitch in there. The way I see that role developing is, it will be in terms of more of a support system than of a physical kind of a cooperation. I mean, I would say a cooperation that could come into play in terms of, say, maritime domain awareness, in terms of information, in terms of intelligence, in terms of other capabilities. They may be helping each other, but I don't think physically all the four countries coming together to form something against China. I think that is a bit far-fetched. I don't think that happening. But in terms of other cooperation, you saw BECA being signed, you have Kamkasa, which has been signed, you have the other LEMOA that has been signed. Those support systems will come into play, but I don't think a physical kind of thing that's I think is a little far-fetched.
Okay, I have one more question for you. This is regarding China's force projection capabilities in the Indian Ocean region, and specifically, in terms of the way PLA Marines, the Marine Corps is being developed. There has been the first deployment of Marine Corps in Djibouti. How do you see this aspect developing in future, moving towards 2035?
There are two aspects to it. One is, we have seen three things concerning the Marine Corps. When this reforms started taking place in 2016, the PLA Navy had typically two Marine brigades. That's all they had. At the moment, we expect them to be having 6 or 7 fully formed Marine brigades. When they said that they are going to reduce 300,000 troops from the PLA, we also saw a corresponding increase in something like Marine Corps. The plan, as we have been observing for some time now, is to increase this Marine Corps to about 100,000 strength. If that is the case, that actually plays into the power projection mode. The PLA Marines are actually supposed to be doing this power projection part of it. The second aspect that we have been noticing is that even the Marines have been going and doing training in their strategic training areas in Xinjiang and northern part of Xinjiang. So there seems to be another role that is being given to them. So the issue that comes up is the Marines' role is still evolving. That is something we can see. Marines are meant for force projection. That is also we can see. The third thing is, for any kind of power projection like this to take place, as Admiral Lamba brought out, is the requirement for bases. I am fully in agreement with him when he says that the commercial ports can't be actually be used as a logistic basis for supporting naval operations on a long term. But my problem is, Djibouti, when they acquired, they said it is not going to have any kind of naval role. They said it is just going to be for replenishment and things like that. Slowly, they are converting that into a base. So if such a thing can happen in fully Chinese-owned base ports over a period of time, if they are able to develop, then you will find the basing facilities coming up in many places. For example, Port Piraeus of Greece, it is 100% owned by them. So in such places, if they can create the bases, then you will find a global presence of PLA Navy increasing. Again, I'm actually ambivalent as far as this is concerned, whether it will happen by 2035. I'm not sure of that. I don't think that it's too early for them to start operating in that manner. But given the time frame of 2050 and beyond, we need to be prepared to see PLA Navy operating in many seas of the world. So that is the point I was wanting to convey.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me now turn to Darshana. Darshana, you are working on a book about the significance of strategic islands in Indian Ocean region. Which of these countries are likely to cooperate with China in its expansion in the IOR, and at what level? And to what extent these countries will become arenas for India-China rivalry?
Thank you, Ambassador Kanta. I think there are a number of aspects to it in the sense that there is, first of all, I don't think so the islands are looking to kind of offer a particular base to the Chinese. I think they're very concerned about the whole issue of sovereignty. In fact, they want to make sure that it doesn't become a battleground for India and China or even US and China. But at the same time, it also offers them an opportunity to able to kind of able to use this as an opportunity to get to address their own security concerns. So that is one thing. I mean, if you look at the Indian Ocean islands, there has been a change in the way they identify, and it's remarkably different than almost a decade ago. They don't identify as much as the South Asian country or an African nation anymore. It's more like an Indian Ocean nation, because a number of countries looking to coordinate or cooperate with Indian Ocean nations will become are much more than the number of kind of world global engagement with just South Asia or with Africa. In terms of islands that might become, I mean, Sri Lanka and Maldives, of course, are a main concern because of its proximity to India. I think Maldives has been a concern. We've also seen some politically difficult time in Sri Lanka and Maldives in recent times. But I think this is going to be consistent across the Indian Ocean region. We're not looking, there hasn't been so much attention in the Western Indian Ocean. If you look at Madagascar, if you look at Comoros, they are doing a lot more in terms of collaborations. Even the diplomatic presence is pretty good in the Western Indian Ocean and these island nations. And there is a lot of historical baggage for all of these countries, even for the Western Indian Ocean, where France is the primary kind of security partner. There's a little bit of historical baggage where they acknowledge that they cannot work without France, similar to Sri Lanka and Maldives, where they acknowledge that you cannot work without India as a partner. But there is a move to make sure that India and France are not the only countries you are completely dependent on, that you expand your security partners across the region. And that does not necessarily have to mean China. But the issue is, at this moment, that is what is available. They are very keen to engage with other countries, Japan, Australia, even there's a lot of engagement from EU. But the concerns are different. The security concerns are different. The way they define security challenges is very different than the way we define security challenges. Their security challenges are illegal fishing, disaster, blue economy, trafficking, climate change, and And those are the concerns that they have. So you see a lot of them working with World Bank, with Norway, with Scandinavian countries and others to kind of adopt that. So that's what I meant when I said in the remarks that somewhere our approach to the Indian Ocean region also has to be a balance between non-traditional security issues and traditional security issues. Because for the first time, these are the islands that played a big role in the Second World War and even historically because of the geography. For the first time, they have agency as sovereign nations with foreign policy choices and strategic interests, and their interest in foreign policy choices will have an impact on how India is seen and how India is in the Indian Ocean region.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there are a number of questions in the chat box, so I'll take up some of those questions. Let me begin with Mr. Moomin Chen. He has a question which I'll request Admiral Lamba to respond to. He is inquiring how will India prevent China from turning Hambantota port in Sri Lanka into a logistics supporting base?
When this agreement of the lease of 99 years was signed between Sri Lanka and China because of non-payment of the dues, there was an agreement which India and Sri Lanka had, that Sri Lanka had assured that Hambantota will not be used by the Chinese Navy or for any facilities or for supporting a base. So that was the stand which was there then. Now, I think it will be the engagement between India and Sri Lanka and working together. That is the only way we can ensure that Hambantota is not converted into a logistic hub for the Chinese Navy. As things stand, Sri Lanka has assured us that it will not be done. But what happens in the future will only tell.
Thank you. There's another question again for Admiral Lamba from Amrut Godbole. Amrut would like to unmute and ask the question directly.
I can read his question if you are. I can answer it.
Yeah.
He's talked about the Maritime Information Sharing Technical Agreement. We already have a signed agreement with the United States on sharing of white shipping data, and two-way exchange of information is also taking place now. I think this is now, as far as my memory goes, about 2.5, 3 years old. Now, Maritime Information Sharing Technical Agreement is now for classified information. And that dialogue has been going on. With the signing of COMCASA, kits have been exchanged where now you can talk directly between the two navies and there is a flow of information, or you can say intelligence also taking place. So I'm quite sure it's just a matter of time before this Maritime Information Technical Agreement is signed and there is a two-way flow of information between our two countries. And it will help us, both the United States and us, to have a more comprehensive maritime domain awareness of both the Indian Ocean and the larger Indo-Pacific.
Thank you. There's another question by Commodore Anil Jaisingh. Commodore would like to ask you a question directly. And please also identify the panelists you are addressing your question to.
Thank you, sir. I think my video is still muted, but I think I'm audible otherwise. My question is to both Admiral Lamba and General Narasimhan. So protecting the slogs in the Indian Ocean once the BRI is up and running will definitely give China the excuse to have a permanent planned PLA Navy presence in the Indian Ocean. Not that they won't have it otherwise, but this gives them a legitimate excuse to be there in substantial numbers. And they've already made it quite clear that eventually they are going to position a carrier battle group in the Indian Ocean region. Given this sort of a presence and the requirement for adequate logistic support to keep these ships there and be able to sustain them, wouldn't they try and convert some of these ports which they have developed under the BRI in some of the countries which are favorable to them into logistic support facilities? May not be full-fledged naval bases, but definitely logistic support facilities for the ships to operate, for maintaining them, essential repairs, change of crews, etc., etc.
Narasimhan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can do that. This was the thrust I had when I spoke earlier regarding the acquisition that they've been doing. One place, of course, everybody knows is Gwadar, how it is going to shape up. We don't know as yet. That is one, and next to that, Jiwani was also being talked about some time ago. So this is something which is in the works. In addition to that, it is a well-known fact that they have been looking at some kind of facilities on the eastern coast of Africa. This is also in many places the writings have come up on this. So they are looking for some kind of logistic support facilities, if not bases, in the Indian Ocean region. And it will be only prudent for us to take that on board and think that at some point in time, there will be the presence of the PLA Navy and the logistic support bases will be available in the Indian Ocean region. There is also a connected question regarding the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is very simple in the sense to me that at least 4 aircraft carriers are required for him to actually start stepping out into the Indian Ocean region. That is something that he has to work around, and that we think that may not be possible by 2035, maybe a little beyond that, but we need to be prepared for a carrier battle group to be operating in the Indian Ocean region. May not be for a long period of time, but at least in the show of strength and force, power projection, etc., we need to be prepared for it.
Thank you.
I entirely agree with what General Narasimhan has said. He already has a logistic base and facility where he's also now constructed a large jetty in Djibouti. And in my opinion, in the long run, the most probable other base would be in Gwadar. He's invested a lot of money there, and his close ties with Pakistan and where Pakistan is going and the dependencies of Pakistan on China growing year on year. So I think in the long run, you may have a base facility in Gwadar. East coast of Africa, it's still an open thing where now the East Coast African nations have also realized that there are no free lunches with all the Chinese aid which is coming to them. Coming on to there's also another question which I think AVM Bahadur had put on the CBG. I think China is a long way away from operationalizing the carrier battle group. The basic punch of the carrier is the air wing. At the moment, they don't have enough aircraft to put on both their present aircraft carriers, and whatever flying operations have taken place from the carrier has been by day when the carrier has been tethered close to an airfield ashore. So they've only been doing diversionary flying from the carrier by day. The effectiveness of a carrier is when you can do non-diversionary flying, that is, you have no airport or airstrip available nearby from the carrier. That means the aircraft who is launched from the carrier has to come back and land on the aircraft carrier. He can't go and divert to another airstrip ashore. And I think the Chinese Navy is a long way away from doing non-diversionary flying by day, and doing non-diversionary flying by night is a different kettle of fish. Because you need the carrier, you need a qualified crew, you need a reliable aircraft where you can do non-diversionary flying by day. And so I think they're still decades away from operationalizing their air wing of the carrier battle group. And before they can do that, it's not going to be deployed outside their home waters.
Thank you. Thank you. We are running out of time, so we'll be able to take another question or two. Colonel KK Venkatraman wishes to ask a question. Colonel, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
How do the proposed defense reforms in India address the PLA Navy threat in the Indian Ocean region?
Who would you like this question to be?
So to both General Narasimhan and Admiral Lamba.
Admiral Lamba, can you go first on this? You should be better prepared to answer this question.
There can't be any specific defense reforms to take on a particular navy. I entirely agree with you that we need an overall reform of higher management of defense in the country. The steps have already been taken place at the moment with the appointment of the Chief of Defense Staff and the formation of Department of Military Affairs. More than that is you need a higher defense organization at the apex level, where the CDS and the 3 service chiefs have a regular meet with the political leadership of the country. At the moment, the CDS or the service chiefs, they cannot be members of the CCS, and all other bodies which are there, the political leadership is absent in them, where the CDS and the chiefs are members. What we need is a body where the CDS and the service chiefs and the political leadership sit on the same table. And that, in my view, is a critical reform of higher defense organization and management, which our country needs. Yeah, over to you, Narasimhan.
I substantiate the views of Admiral Lamba on this. Again, the reforms that we are looking at are not, again, theater-specific or country-specific. We shouldn't think of the reforms in that manner. The moment you see that, then it becomes very, very narrow kind of a reform which will only cater for a particular requirement. What we are looking at is from a threat-based kind of capability, we are going to go towards a capability-based capability. So this is the transformation that we need to look at as far as these reforms are concerned. That is what we need to look at. That is the reason you will find the synergization of the forces coming in because of the reforms. You would have heard about the theater commands in the papers a couple of days ago. There are issues which are being worked out in the sense that you synergize, you integrate your capability to ensure that you are able to face the threats that are coming to you from any kind of direction or from any kind of country. That is the way you need to look at it. I am fully in agreement with Admiral Lamba when he says that it can't be a Navy-specific or a country-specific. It can't be like that. It has to be an overall perception of threat. Not only that, also the role you want to see India play 20 years, 30 years down the line. Are you going to remain only in the subcontinent? Are you going to play a role in the region? Are you going to play a role in the world? That has to actually dictate what kind of reforms and what kind of armed forces and the capability that you need to have. So that is the way you need to look at the reforms and not either a country or a service-specific threat.
Thank you. We have absolutely run out of time, but I'll just take 2 more questions, very quick questions. One by Samanvay Huda and then Sachin Kulkarni. Samanvay?
Thank you, sir. It's a very small question, and I was hoping we could have all 3 panelists just give their views on this.
No, I think I'll address to one because we are running out of time.
Okay, sure. Then Darshana and Admiral Lamba, if we have the time. What kind of role do you see for the Indian Navy specifically, that specific arm, in small-scale hostilities like the kind of which we have along the border right now?
Okay. Sachin, can you ask your question also? Sachin Kulkarni?
Yes, sir. So my question is, China is providing 8 Yuan-class submarines, AIP submarines to Pakistan. It's also providing 4 Type 054 Alpha multi-role stealth frigates and many more naval platforms and equipment worth $7 billion. It has also found foothold in Iran and also believed to have provided some EW equipment to Iran, sir. So my question is, so do you see some kind of nexus or collusivity forming between China, Iran, and Pakistan with covert support from Turkey and also maybe Russia? And what would be the implications for India in the IOR, sir, with this kind of collusivity? Your views.
Admiral Lamba, would like to start, and then I'll request Jen Narasimhan and then finally Darshana. Final remarks.
Regarding the naval platforms which China is supplying to Pakistan, one is the surface force are just there to replace very old platforms which are there in the Pakistan Navy at the moment. So the overall numbers of their surface forces not going to grow with the supply of these 4 frigates. The 8 Yuan class AIP submarines will make a difference of sea denial capabilities which Pakistan have, and taking in the hydrology which is there in the North Arabian Sea, they will pose a challenge. But we are now investing a great deal in anti-submarine detection capabilities in the form of additional Boeing aircrafts, and also finally, after a very long gap of 30 years, multi-role helicopters which play a critical role in anti-submarine warfare. 24 of them are now being inducted into the Indian Navy. So I'm quite confident that we will be able to take care of this threat. Regarding the collusivity between Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, China, Russia, yeah, it's a big game. The world, there is a strategic uncertainty in the world. And I think the 3rd of November is going to make a great deal of difference in case you have a new president in the United States and what tack the foreign policy initiatives are taken by the new administration. If President Trump continues, then things are going to be very different in the world in the next few years, because Iran and Pakistan have their issues. I don't know whether they're going to be bedfellows. I think the jury is out. Narasimha, you can throw more light on it.
On the question of I will not talk about the supplies that the equipment that is being supplied from China to Pakistan. I think Admiral Lamba has covered it in a good amount of detail. When the exercise took place between China, Russia, and Iran off the Persian Gulf, that was the time when we also started looking at whether this could expand to include Pakistan at some point in time. So this is something which is open as yet. We have not actually closed that gap as of now. The second thing is Russia and China are coming closer to each other basically because there seem to be a common adversarial relationship with the USA between all the 3. So therefore, you find Russia and China getting closer, China and Iran also getting closer, and this is a combination that is now developing, and we need to keep watching this further. As far as the collusivity is concerned, even in the recent standoffs in Ladakh, this question kept coming up once and time and again. It kept coming up whether there'll be collusivity, etc. And there were also some vague kind of pictures and all started coming up by Y-20 aircraft landing in Skardu and other places. So while the equipment support, moral support, diplomatic support will definitely be available to each other from China and Pakistan, we still don't see them coming so close that they'll be able to launch some kind of an operation together at the same time. Even if they do, then I'm sure there are enough plans available in the armed forces to take care of that kind of a scenario. Only one point I wanted to make as a closing remark, what Darshana said, that the countries were willing to invite China to invest in those countries. I would request you to please look at Bangladesh. I would request you to please look at Myanmar. I would request you to look at some other countries which actually were not so much attracted towards this kind of investment. They have been extremely careful. There have been pushbacks to Chinese investments. Those things also you need to take into account when you deal with this region.
Darshana?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, General Narasimhan. Absolutely. I just quickly 2 points on the point of the Iran, Saudi Arabia, China. You can actually also see that across the Indian Ocean islands, there's a lot of projects that China is doing in terms of in collaboration with Saudi Arabia. There's also the religion angle with Comoros and Maldives as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned. So, and Russia is quite engaged with elections in Madagascar and political environment. So I think there is a little bit of interest, and these countries are also within the top 5 nationalities that form tourism to the island nations. So in terms of if you're looking at really collaborations between these countries, I think that's something that can be looked into. Just one question, I think that was addressed in terms of what kind of a role the Indian Navy can play in small-scale hostility along the border. On the continental side, I'm not sure, but there is this question that India should look to increase its pressure points in the Indian Ocean region. And one thing that is talked of often is just block off the Chinese commercial trade in the Malacca Straits. And I'm not sure, what Admiral Lamba has to say on that, but it's not easy to block off trading routes especially in peacetime. It's not going to be easy for India to pick and choose just Chinese commercial ships coming into the Straits of Malacca. And if we are at that stage of really looking to target vessels, I think we've gone way past than just a small scale conflict. We've gone to a much larger strategic kind of a military conflict. And I think the way India can do is what Admiral Lamba and General Narasimhan has also said is to really maintain its advantage, which is, again, India has a huge advantage right now. We are on an advantageous side. Geography has played a key role. We have signed a lot of logistics agreements. We've signed a lot of key foundational documents which can be used creatively. Not to kind of, with all due respect, I think maybe Navy at times has been ahead of the MEA when it comes to thinking about the region at large, simply because, there are continental threats and the political class has to think about it from imminent threats point of view. The focus to the Indian Ocean has been really new from an MEA and political point of view. It's as new as almost as the last decade, but from a Navy's point of view, it has been longer. And I think there has been a little bit of catch up to do on that. And we're seeing that happening right now. But I think ultimately it'll depend on what the political class wants, because we are a democracy, and ultimately that decisions will be taken in the halls of South Block. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have many questions in the chat room and also raised hands. Unfortunately, we have absolutely run out of time, so I'll have to bring this webinar to a closure now. Let me thank the 3 panelists, Admiral Sunil Lanba, General Narasimhan, and Darshana, for excellent presentations they made and for their responses to a large number of questions that came up. I believe all in all, we had a very educative, very illuminating webinar this afternoon. Thank you very much. And let me also thank our partners, Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and ThePrint, for organizing this webinar, which elicited a very good response, both in terms of number of colleagues and friends who participated and those who are following the proceedings on YouTube channel. So thank you very much, everyone.